Though not critical, it's a matter of convenience, and because I'm making a movie, I'm just going to move this fuel filter out of the way and tie it off onto the frame. There we go, that'll be much better to work with. A fundamental note about this job and a general rule for motorcycles with more than one carburetor is we're only going to be going into one carb at a time. We're not going to be opening both of these up. We don't want to mix up parts. It's just bad business. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just pick a carburetor and start with it. But before I begin, as a matter of preparation, there are two solenoids here. You can see as part of the emission system. And I just want to disconnect the electrical harness from these. They are keyed, so you can plug one in the wrong position. We're going to follow these wires back and do that now. We could see that they lead to these black and white plugs right here. There's no way to get them backwards. We're going to disconnect these, pull them back through so they flop down in front of the carburetors. Metal bracket that holds it in place. We just bend that bracket back a little bit. We're able to pull this down. And now we can see both wires are hanging out of the way. That portion is now done. I'm going to take a quick moment to talk about proper tools. If you don't have the proper tool set, you got to make your way to at least a Harbor Freight and get a decent tool set to do this. If you could try and use like Allen keys or the wrong thing and strip out these bolts, you're going to have a miserable time. You're going to break stuff and you're going to get very frustrated. Go out and spend the $10. Get a tool set before you do this, or don't bother, or go pay somebody else to do it. That's going to be my rant about the proper tool for the job, and I'm not going to say it again, but at least I feel as though I should have said it once in this video. With that in mind, we're going to begin, and we're going to start with the back carburetor. And we already know that the carburetor bowl is filled with gasoline, and we don't want a face full of gasoline. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn the drain screw for the bowl, and we're just going to let that gasoline that's currently in the bowl just drain out. There's just a little bit, but we don't want it pouring all over the place when we break the seal. And this is just a standard screw. You can see it's just pouring out now. It's not a lot. I then decided I didn't want to smell this all day. I put a rag under it, and then I reopened it again and let it drain. So you might want to put a rag under it and then open it. That would be the smart play. The value for these 4 screws will be hex number 3. Paying attention to one thing, we can see here that this particular one holds that bracket for the cable. Also, this particular screw in the bottom right, which you can see I've loosened a little more, this one cannot be done with the straight screwdriver. It either needs a socket with a swivel, if you could get a small socket on there, or what I prefer to use for this one is a small ratcheting mini set like this that you could pick up for cheap at an auto parts store. The other thing that I do is I just like to break the tension. I don't go and rip out one screw at a time. It is gasketed aluminum, so I break the tension first on all 4 and then I take the screws out, which I've started on the bottom right one since the tension is broken on all 4. It's a little tougher than the other ones. You got to get in there and dig in, but it's not terrible. I mean, it's just not a convenient one. You could see I got it out. It wasn't a big deal. I couldn't use like the screwdriver-like device. I actually had to use a mini ratchet, but whatever. Go pick one up. It cost you like $3 and you're done. The other ones, of course, couldn't be easier. I mean, if you're just sitting here like this, you can pop them right out. You get them loose and you can take them out with your fingers. It's like all the clearance in the world to get these things out. I'm just demonstrating with the screwdriver going in on all of these. So I've got all 4 screws out now. The only thing that's holding this thing into place is the seal of the gasket. You know, the rubber gasket's holding this thing on. When you take this off, you got to take it off very carefully. You don't want to damage the float inside, and you don't want to change the settings of the float, or you're going to have to do the whole float adjustment as shown in the manual. And this small project is going to turn into a much larger project. Not that the float setting on this is difficult, provided you don't damage it and have to replace it. But that's not what this job is about. This job is just about cleaning out basically a dirty jet. You don't want to turn this into something that it's not. We're going to break the seal here. Just a little wiggle, very gently. There we go, very gently. We come off and we've detached it. And now we could inspect and see what's going on here. Let me reposition the camera. We can see that the seal's in good condition. A couple areas that could be cleaned up. There's no garbage on the bottom of the bowl. It's very clean. Like I said, these carbs are maintained. There's just an area of particular concern that needs to be addressed, which is why this whole thing did not need to be ripped out. That's why we're doing this job. So now we're going to take a look at the carb and see what's going on, and we're going to start this process. We have a good view up here at the bottom of the carburetor. We're going to get a sized flathead screwdriver, and we're going to pull from this unit, and we're going to take a look outside where we get a nice view. I pulled the first one from the unit, and I could see that this one is not clogged. Things are looking okay. I mean, I'm going to run some cleaner through it, obviously, but this one is not plugged up. I'll put this off to the side and move to the next. Next, I'm going to pull off this entire emulsion tube and jet inside with an 8mm. Just like that. Once I get it started, I can just spin it out with my fingers. I'll put this down. You can see this. There it is removed, and now we can take it out of the bike and inspect it. I don't know if this one shows up on the camera. I'll do my best. This one has significant blockage, as to be expected. This one hangs lower into the bowl. Like I said, a common problem. I can't get it to focus. I'm doing my best here. Also, the tube that sits on the inside, I'll try and get a shot of that too in the carb. This is going to have to be cleaned. The other piece is going to be cleaned as well on the bike with some carb cleaner. We're going to blow it out, and we'll be able to install it back in the unit, clean up as much as we can with the carb open, and patch it back up. That's what the jet's supposed to look like when it's cleaned out. Now this one is ready to be put back in after I take care of what's going on inside the carb. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to take the carburetor cleaner, and I'm going to stick it in here and stick the nozzle up there and spray in here and work my way out and make sure that everything is clean up in here and that all of these holes here are free flowing, and also spray it in this thread work here where the other one was removed. Make sure that everything is nice and clean in here. Give it a once over, and then with a clean rag, what I do is I clean up this mating surface where the bottom of the float bowl cover is going to go back on, right? So then after this is all cleaned up, I could put all the brass back in. I'm ready to do reassembly. I'm going to start with the little jet first. Put that up in there and get it turned a few threads by hand. We don't want to cross thread it. Take your time. Get up in there. Again, like I said, it's brass. It only needs to be snugged down. You don't need to destroy this stuff when you work on it. There we go. I've already fully seated it by hand. Now, having fully seated it, I just come along with the screwdriver. Right now, there's no pressure yet. Now, just a little snug. That's it. Nothing more. It's brass. You turn it tight, it's going to crack. That goes around the bottom of it. Make sure that that's okay. This one is just fine. Check that once before this goes in. This will also be hand turned back into the unit. There is a copper washer up in there. You make sure that that doesn't fall out. I'm getting this one started again. Again, just screwing in with 2 fingers. There's very little chance of cross threading. I could seat this all the way just with my hands, no problem at all. It's fully seated. I'm going to get the 8mm back on there and just give it a very gentle once over, make sure it's tight. I got the 8mm on here, and I'm just taking out the slack. That's all I'm doing. It's taking out the slack. That's it. If the gaskets are not new, such as my case, I like to put a gasket dressing on there. It looks kind of like a Vaseline, but it's got PTFE in there, so it's not like household grade for people. It's more industrial, but that's something that I go with. So I recommend a gasket dressing, especially if they're getting kind of dried out. And that's what I put on this. That's why it has sort of a shine and a sheen to it. I put it on this one as well as on that O-ring that went on the emulsion tube. And when I say I put it on, we're talking like the most trace amount possible just to give it a sheen. You're not slopping this stuff on. You can't even see it on the metal. I mean, that's how very little I've applied to this. Also remember that this doesn't go straight on. Look how the tube points down. This sort of comes in on an angle and pushes upward. Keep that in mind when doing this. You don't want to damage the O-ring. And just like that, it's back on. All 4 of the screws will be put in just so there's no slack, and then we will start tightening it down. Only then. All 4 screws are now in. Now they can all get a gentle snug to complete this carburetor. The last one, of course, has to be carefully done with the mini ratchet. I'm going to make sure one last time that my drain is fully closed, as I'm no longer going to be working on this carb.